Reality is a deeply interconnected multidimensional equation. And as with any equation, changing one variable changes the entire equation. If we take a very simple equation, 2 plus 2 times 3, if we change any of those numbers, or the plus sign, or the multiplication sign, the outcome is different. And reality is an interconnected equation. It's multidimensional. We can look at thought, we can look at feeling, we can look at sensation, but these are connected. A thought creates a feeling creates a sensation. You can have no feeling without a sensation that registers the feeling consciously. So all dimensions are connected, and all parts of reality, even a nail of a pinky, is connected through the gravitational equation to a spot of dust on Mars. In order for the gravitational equation to change with this pinky, it has a ripple effect on that gravitational equation on that spot of dust on Mars. Everything affects everything else. And then we come into the domain of the lie. Now, the lie is an interjected illusionary object. So, for example, if there are 2 pieces of wood plus 2 pieces of wood, there are 4 pieces of wood. If you times 4 pieces of wood by 3, there are now 12 pieces of wood. Now, the reality of those 12 pieces of wood, those patterns of energy, is what is connected to the equation. And the totality of that equation we could call source, we could call divinity, we could call all that is. But it is spherical in nature, meaning it wraps around and connects with itself. In this equation, in this pattern of cohesion, if we tell a lie of omission, for example, we look at 2 objects, we omit the other 2. So there's no longer 2 plus 2 equals 4. We omit 2 units of energy, 2 patterns of energy. So now we have 2 times 3 equals 6. Now the 3 is part of the equation. The omission changes the outcome by 50%. 2 times 3 versus 2 plus 2 times 3. There is a 50% veil, meaning the underlying equation, when you lie through omission, the underlying equation doesn't change. There's still 12 patterns of energy called pieces of wood. But you're consciously only allowed to perceive 6 of those 12. Now imagine the blind spot for a moment. If you were only allowed to see half of reality, you can see what's going on over here, but you can't see what's going on over here. What are the implications of that? If you see a flying object coming at 30 miles an hour that's likely to hit your head, and it's coming from this side, and you can see this side, you step out of the way, and a violation of your physical body is averted. If, however, you are only allowed to see half of reality through lies of omission, you don't see the object of energy coming towards you because it doesn't exist in your mental paradigm. But it doesn't stop that object from knocking you off physically. When it hits you, you just don't know what hits you. You don't know where it's coming from. You experience a sense of helplessness, trauma, and PTSD through lies of omission. Now, a lie of fact is similar in impact to a lie of omission. Something's going on over here that is denied. And instead, a synthetic object is created over here to explain the missing pieces. Because in any equation that's interconnected, if the outcome is 12, and you see the outcome is 12, and you see 2 times 3, missing 2, equals 12. You say, no, it doesn't. A part of that equation is missing. And so in an effective diversion from truth, in a lie in fact, you have to create a new fact to explain the outcome. Now, that could be saying that the outcome is wrong. It's 2 times 3 equals 6. You wouldn't know there was a lie of fact there. You wouldn't know that there's 2 lies. One lie always creates another or drives an individual insane. Insane is simply dissociation from the underlying pattern of reality to a point that you lose coherency. We would call someone who walks out in front of a moving truck insane. We would call someone who gives money to people who hurt them insane. But they're not behaving insane in their own mind. An insane person deletes portions of reality that other people perceive in order to behave consistently with a series of lies of omissions or lies of fact that were given to them, usually in Homo sapiens species, by other human beings. So you can create insanity. You look at the object, 2 plus 2 times 3 equals 12. But Dad says it equals 5. And Dad's got a belt. And Mom's not going to interfere in this lie because she doesn't want to deal with a 3-hour argument. You have a lie of omission, a lie of fact. But if you go insane and join Dad in his reality, where 12 equals 5, it seems like happy days. No belt, no 2-hour argument with Mom. Let's just join Dad in his insanity. Let's just join Mom in her delusion where she didn't do anything wrong, where she didn't forget the time and didn't cause this and didn't cause that because it makes Mom feel bad. Let's join Mom in her delusion that everything's wonderful, that it's fabulous to fail to graduate, it's wonderful to have soda and Snickers bars for lunch and be driven up the wall and break out in spots. These things are fantastic. Because if they are fantastic, it means that mom's doing a good job. And if mom's doing the good job, she can feel good about herself. And if she feels good about herself, she won't hit us. She won't be snarky that day. And we can all live happily ever after. So, a lie of omission, a lie of fact, a lie of insanity, the insanity of projection where, and this ties in with abuse of power. All legitimate power is in service to public well-being, to the group. A lie from someone in power, and in power what we're referring to is the law of mass, that when a bowling ball collides with a pinball, the pinball goes flying, the bowling ball continues on its trajectory. It's a law of mass. It's a law of power. Someone with a larger mass, financially, physically, emotionally, mentally, someone with a larger mass, when they collide with you, you are cast aside, bounced off, changed, traumatized, shattered, altered course. You are changed. But the larger mass has some change. The bowling ball, for example, will slow down in its trajectory by the weight of the pinball. So if the bowling ball is 100 times heavier than the pinball, and they collide at equal speed, going in opposite directions, the pinball bounces back and is thrown off of its chosen course. The bowling ball continues on its chosen course, but with 1% less speed, because the difference in size is absorbed into the mass. It slows it down by 1%, but it continues. And a 1% deviation from autonomy does not have the traumatic impact that a 99%, that a 180 has. When you're going on your trajectory and you hit an object and you bounce back violently in the exact opposite direction of where you want it to go, it is a traumatic event. A traumatic event is the absorption of an energy field that is bigger than the identity of the self can process and digest. It floods the system. It erases the perception of time and space. It's all-consuming, and one is catapulted in a helpless state that is out of control and unregulated into the exact opposite place that you want to go, in order to accommodate a larger mass. It's called trauma. And when it happens perniciously, when it happens repeatedly, with no effort to attune, when a parent beats the shit out of a child again and again and again, abusing that mass, the law of mass, to communicate a message. I matter, but you don't. Get out of my way. The identity, the pattern of energy, that is the smaller mass, is changed, alters, develops symptoms of PTSD, but also internalizes the message, I don't matter, which kicks the brain into high gear to create a reality of worthlessness consistent with the pattern transmitted by the abuser, by the one in a larger position of mass. All legitimate power is in service to public well-being and freely given. All dictatorships, all totalitarian states, all domination, all intimidation is not freely given. And when it is done by a larger mass in relationship to a smaller mass, it causes trauma. It causes trauma. It is an abuse of power because the underlying drive in every human being, which is to feel sustainably good and to avoid feeling chronically bad, chooses to avoid the belt, chooses to avoid the beating, chooses to avoid the drunken rape, chooses to hide in the room rather than be shouted at in person. And when the permission to come back in grace, to come back without trauma and violation is predicated on a lie, meaning if the only way that the bigger one will stop shouting at you is if you lie, you are asked to decide by someone abusing their power to separate from yourself and the equation of the entirety of reality in order to buy peace with the abuser. In that separation is the demand to go insane, to disconnect from self, to disconnect from the equation of all that is, and what is obtained is appeasement of the insane abuser. The insane abuser who is asking themselves and you, through intimidation and fear, to believe a lie that separates you from the rest of all that is, that tears the equation. And in doing so, it creates a partition. It creates loneliness. It creates invisibility. It creates fear. It creates insanity. It creates pain. All pain is a symptom of separation. When asked to believe a lie, be that a lie of omission or a lie of data, one separates oneself from God, from divinity, from goddess, from all that is. That is an interconnected equation. One separates oneself and demands a separation for anyone that connects with you, because the law of empathy that says, I want to understand your world, I want to see things through your eyes. Anyone who empathizes, uses mirror neurons to connect with the person living in delusion, living in a lie, must separate a part of their brain from the reality that they know, must dissociate from their own sanity, the integrated connection with all that is, in order to understand, in order to be with the person who is insane, who has dissociated, in order And there's only one force. There's only one force that causes an individual to dissociate from themselves and dissociate from reality. And it is abuse. It is traumatic abuse of power. When a parent, when a government, when a military operative, when a bullying lover, when a sociopathic gang dictates that you internalize an equation, an outcome, a number, that is a break from your understanding and perception of reality, your relationship with the divine equation, with the underlying matrix of mathematics. That does not lie. If you want to find the lies, look to mathematics and let go of the cult. The root word of culture is cult, because a cult is founded on establishing simple, repeatable, familiar lies. A cult is founded on establishing repeatable, simple, familiar lies. Hey, how are you? I'm fine. It's a culture. It's not true. I don't want to know how you are. I'm begging that you don't tell me, and I'm not going to tell you. And the cult continues. Hey, how are you? I'm fine. Hey, how are you? I'm fine. Hey, how are you? I'm fine. Isn't it wonderful that we live in a cult where everyone wants to know how the other person is doing and everyone is doing fine? It's wonderful to be part of such a cult. Carry on. It's just to be part of that cult and not outcast from the rhythm of lies, the protocol of deception. One has to fall in line, not with the underlying reality, but with the lie. One has to sever the connection with self and all that is in order to put forth something that isn't real, that invites the observer to deviate their perception from the truth, the mathematical weights. You see, emotions have weights. They have mass. In the body, they have masses defined by intensity, by regions of the body, by repetition, predisposition. Emotions have weight. Memories have actual weight that varies by person and by body. And when those weights are presented differently, we become invisible in order to accommodate the other's desire not to see. We become invisible as we homogenize and average those weights and then politically adjust those weights. We're not there any longer. We either ask other people to see something that we don't see and become alone, because then people are relating to the lie and not to the self. Or we believe our own lie and get lost so deeply in our own delusions that the truth of who we are appears frightening to ourselves because it is so disturbing to everyone else. When the doctrine of a cult, when the party line of a cult says, we are this type of people, and we don't like this type of people, but we are all this type of people. We're all cheerful, happy, and hardworking. And we are not this type of people over here. Every member of that cult must dissociate from the parts of the self that don't fit in. And those disowned parts, cut off from attunement, cut off from relationship, asked to go crazy, because every time you take the interwoven fabric of the psyche and split it in half and discard part of the psyche, which is the shadow, every time you do that, you ask that part to go crazy. You ask it to pretend that it has nothing to do with the whole that it is integrally connected to. You ask objects that could be pounding with intensity to pretend that they're a zero when they're 998 kilohertz. That doesn't play very well. Just be a zero. If you just pretend to be a zero, then we can continue the delusion in the cult. Now you have to pretend you don't exist. Could you manage that? Okay, thank you. And now I will pretend that I hate you, because that plays well in the cult as well. Would you mind that? If I tell everyone how I hate laziness and I hate intensity and I hate people that are disorganized, but I've hidden you as the lazy, disorganized part that hates, and that hates even more, that you're asked to play the role of the one who doesn't exist. Could you just do that indefinitely so that my cult buddies will allow me to survive, to feel secure, to have some sense of love and belonging, to feel good about the part that is remaining? Could you do that? And your reward for pleasing me, for pleasing the cult, for going along with the delusion, the reward will be to be publicly humiliated and hated, if you don't mind. Which of course grows the hate. Because if you dissociate a part of the self or an individual in a helpless state and banish them, they will feel enormous pain and enormous injustice, which produces hate. Helplessness, pain, and injustice, if you mix them, creates hate. So banishing the hateful self into the corners to be optimistic and positive for the New Age cult, for the we're the positive group cult, for the I don't like to be around negative people cult. To do that grows the hate, because no one's listening to the mathematics of hate. The mathematics of hate say that every single time you split the self, you weaken the self. Every time you dissociate and banish the self, you create loneliness. Loneliness equates to pain. Unmitigating loneliness and pain creates fear. Fear creates desperation when unanswered. And when that desperation is betrayed by the sociopathic fear of the one banishing the hate, it creates more hate. More and more energy is transferred through suppression and denial into the quadrant of energy pattern that is the shadow. And in an emotionally and psychologically illiterate cult, a cult that systematically avoids all forms of emotional education, middle school, high school, work, you have predictable fear of the shadow, which grows the hate but doesn't mitigate it, which must increase the rat race of denying and dissociating from that which is being fed by the denial and the dissociation. If you integrate and own something, you strengthen the self, you heal the wound, the hate subsides. But there is a truth that emerges in the subsiding of hate that cuts through the cult. And a dominated cult with a corrupt power structure at the top will not tolerate the integration of truth. And so the individual is ostracized as a complete individual from the shame-based, shadow-enabling cult. When cult members are asked to choose between the party line and the truth, and with it, the party line and the renegade who will no longer tell the lie. When Julian Assange tells the truth of terrorism, of human rights atrocities, of rage, hate, and ugliness at the core of the US military and power structure, he's doing what journalists are supposed to do, but he's not following party lines. And the authority structure of a corrupt authority, corrupt government, will change the laws, will tell more lies in order to attack the source, the problem that Julian Assange will not lie. It is an abuse of legitimate power to attack the individuals who break with cult norms, to tell the truth, as Edward Snowden did, about constitutional, legal, privacy violations on a grand scale with government, as every scapegoat in a family does, by revealing that beneath the surface there's something not quite right about the prissy image created for the neighbors. When an object is created and inserted through an abuse of power with fear and intimidation and held by a group, the individual has two choices. In order to survive, feel secure, have love and belonging in that group, they must abandon and betray their deepest truth, their body, their feelings, and the underlying mathematical equation that connects them with reality, and sublimate that in order to flow with the lie that is occupying the core of the group, and they will be accepted and supported as cult members. Or they must stay connected to their truth. They may stay connected with reality. They may stay connected with their body, with their heart, with their mind, and be cast out from a cult that has no room for the truths and the equations that they harbor, threatening their survival. You see, the bigger the group that casts an individual out, the bigger the traumatic impact on survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, developing gifts, because the synergistic equation of reality says that the bigger the group, the bigger the possibility field. And the bigger the possibility field, the bigger the opportunity for synergy, partnering, and grace, which mathematically predisposes an individual to succeed at survival security within a group relative to being a lone individual on a desert island or on a tropical island. The mathematics rewards integration in a group. But if the only way to buy that integration is through lies of omission, lies in proportion, and lies of fact. You see, a lie of proportion says, oh yeah, feelings. Well, nothing wrong with feelings, but we're here to focus on algebra. Don't worry about the fact that your father's beating your mother every other night with a drunken fit. Don't worry about the fact that you're terrified and wetting your bed at home. We, your teachers, are going to distort the proportion of relevance to say, no, we're not going to give you a single hour of emotional literacy in the entirety of kindergarten, middle school, high school, and college. We're going to pretend that feelings are so irrelevant that they have nothing to do with you. We'll get to them someday. You'll figure them out naturally. Now, algebra, we couldn't let you figure out algebra naturally, no. Tune all that family abuse out. Let's get down and discover A plus C divided by B. Now, if D was this number, what would A be? Because that's really important for your future. If your mom dies and you're put into an orphanage, well, I'm sure you'd make it through that just fine some way or other if you're a real man. But if you don't figure out the real value of D in this equation, you could fail your test. Oh my goodness. And if you failed your test, like all the other successful people who went off on their own, you'd never make it. We're really worried about you. There's a lie of distortion. Nothing wrong with algebra. It's just not as relevant as your mom being beat up at home. But we don't want to deal with actual values, with actual impact. We want to deal with lies. We want to pretend that even though you can check the math, even though you can go to one grown-up after another in your reality, as I did, when have you ever used algebra a day in your life? Well, when I was at high school, okay? Other than when you were pleasing your authorities, when have you actually used it? Never, 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 never. So why am I avoiding the really important things, like learning to think, like understanding my feelings, in order to learn something that no one around me has used a day in their life? Well, we don't want to think about that. Just get through high school, and then you can get a job, and then you can think about these things. That's your analysis, and you want me to learn from you who can't think. I see. Well, it's fit in with the pack or dissociate from the herd. It's go crazy or experience the traumatic probabilities that link to isolation, in a cult that does not like anomalies, that doesn't like the strange, meaning it doesn't like things that are different from itself. When you can't think, the instinctual brain decides based on familiarity. If you can think, the unknown is a beautiful place. It's got horrors, it's got mediocrities, and it's got exceptionally new technology that you've never experienced before that could radically change your life. The unknown is a neutral place that with thought and discernment you can explore. But it's not welcome in a cult that cannot think. A cult that cannot think has one instinct. That's unusual. Something's off about that. It's not normal. You're a strange one. I don't know. I'm not going to think about it, but oh gosh, I'm gonna go back over here where everyone's doing the same thing very comfortably without thinking. And you're going to be alone because you're doing the thing that comes out and makes sense with thought. You're doing connections to the underlying equation. All we're doing is connecting with the cult. The cult that says, you should get an education because I said so. The cult that says, you should rack up $200,000 in college debt because I said so. The cult that says alcohol is okay, but magic mushrooms? Oh, terrifying, horrible. The cult that says have a baby before you have any parental training. Get a couple of cars and you will have arrived and can grow fat in front of an ever-increasing TV and anxiety about increasing credit card debts. And do what the advertisers tell you, because your government has sold the right to your attention to the highest bidder, and nobody protests. So you need to buy more and have more. And it's a lie. It's a lie of omission. It's a lie of proportion. It's a lie in fact. And it cuts individuals off in mass like a cancer from the larger energy body of the reality equation that we are each innately a part of.